On this week's episode of the Crushing Debt Podcast, to sell or not to sell. So welcome back to this week's episode of the Crushing Debt Podcast. My name is Sean Yesner, owner and founder of Yesner Law, and I have with me in studio your financial coach, George Corbello. How you doing, George?
I'm doing extremely well. I'm feeling good, and got some good sleep and doing some stuff like that, but I'm feeling really good.
How was your Valentine's Day?
I've got to say I'm still married, so that's good. So I think I've survived that much. Let's put it like that.
Well, the more impressive thing is that we record these in advance. So the fact that you can say you're still married.
And the winning lottery tickets are...
Yeah,
okay,
exactly. Magic Mind hasn't kicked in yet. So we do have a guest on this week's show. Before we get to our guest real quick, we do need to talk about, or want to talk about, our friends, our sponsors over at Magic Mind. I did take my Magic Mind shot. I was out last night. I was really tired when I woke up this morning. The coffee helped. The coffee helped wake me up. The Magic Mind helped me focus.
Nice. Well, I took my shot. I'm getting, as we record, as soon as we're done, I'm headed to Miami. So I need to focus because I got a 4-hour trip, maybe with traffic, out because my brother is getting married this weekend.
Nice. Congratulations.
So Keith and Nicole, congratulations to you guys. I'm sorry, if I was drunk during the whole, wedding and stuff like that, but you invited me, so that's your fault.
Where in Miami are they? Or are they getting married?
Near South Beach, that area itself. So should be it should be fun this evening and this weekend.
You have your passport to get in and out of Miami.
This guy, yes, I have my my library card, so I should be okay.
I just booked spring break, so we're gonna go down to Naples for a few days to the new Great Wolf Lodge in Naples.
Ooh.
And then we're going over to the Keys to see my best man. He is City of Miami Fire Rescue, but he runs a fishing charter out of Islamorada.
Nice.
So we're going to go the Monday, Tuesday of spring break will be in Naples. The Wednesday, Thursday of spring break will be in Islamorada. The Friday, Saturday of spring break will be in Boca. My late wife's cousin's daughter is getting bat mitzvahed.
Nice.
So we're gonna see family, and then Sunday we drive back to Tampa, and then that's after the weekend prior to all of that. We'll be at Reggae Rise Up. So,
jeez,
I got a busy 10 days.
You have a
large.
Yeah, spring break.
He's got to get his Magic Mind routine going because he's gonna be busy that week.
I want some of that.
Yeah, I'm bringing it. Well, you can get some Magic Mind. Mystery voice on the podcast. You can get some Magic Mind by going to magicmind.com/CD20 for Crushing Debt 20, which gives you 20% off your first order. So again, it's magicmind.com/CD20. So let us introduce that mystery voice.
So rude.
That third mystery voice that you're hearing. She is the founder of Sandy Buys Houses as well as Florida Probate Care. She has 25 years of real estate experience and a deeply personal understanding of homeowner challenges, from facing foreclosure as a single mom to becoming a trusted cash home buyer in New York, Arizona, and Florida. She brings a unique perspective to both foreclosures and probates, and she helps a lot of people who find themselves maybe in those situations. So welcome our guest this week, Sandra Cantu. Welcome, Sandy.
Nice.
Thank you so much, and thank you for the invitation. I appreciate it very much. Great to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. So, maybe we can kind of sort of jump right in right at the beginning. So, we were kind of talking pre-recording about George comes into play if somebody's having problems with their budget. They can't quite get their budget under control. Maybe they need a little adjustment or readjustment in terms of their mindset and what am I doing with my money? How am I spending my money? They see the cliff coming. They come to me when they fall off that cliff and they need some more legal help. When would someone see you? When would you be the most help to somebody?
Well, if someone is in foreclosure, let's just say, all right, and they know that the clock is ticking, and they have met George and they've met with you, and perhaps they've decided to file for bankruptcy, that allows them some additional time in their home. And it does buy them some time, but of course the clock is always ticking. Mm-hmm. So when the clock seems to run out at that point. That's when they can contact me. If dependent upon the stages of the foreclosure, there and also excuse me, there are a lot of variables. So if the house is upside down, and pretty much anyone that bought, say between 2019 to 2023, you're upside down. Sorry. I don't mean to be sounding crude, but
Wow.
it is what it is.
Yeah.
And the market is declining as well, nationwide, not just in Florida. Your best bet would be to come see me about a short sale. And what we do is myself and my team, we will discount the loan, and it'll also buy you some additional time in your home. And at that point, you do know that you will have to leave. And it could take anywhere between, let's say, 3 months. I've seen it be as long as a year.
Okay.
So when people come to me, I just had this happen yesterday. Someone came to me, and typically their mindset is, I want to sell my house. I want to save my house. I need to save my house. What happens, or what do you think happens when, because at some point they have to make that transition from, I would love to save my house, I want to save my house, to maybe it's not affordable to save my house. What
You have no choice.
Yeah, what is it that happens that kind of shifts that mindset?
Well, I think that they have to come to the reality of just looking at the numbers. What are your bills? Even let's just say if they come see you, Sean, right? If they file bankruptcy, and if even after, when their credit cards are done and they are zeroed out, if they really still cannot afford the home, then you need to take a good hard look at selling it and moving forward.
Yeah.
It's really, it's a mindset. It is true. Sometimes with some people it takes a little bit longer than others. And,
Well, and I think especially it's somebody that, we've got to take a look at the budget. And I know what they want to do, but it's what can the budget support? What can, people come to me all the time. I want to file a Chapter 13 and save my house. And actually, I think this happened yesterday. I want to file a Chapter 13, a payment plan bankruptcy, and save my house. And I say, okay, well, what do you do for a living? And they say, well, I lost my job. Well, Chapter 13 requires that you have money coming into the house in order to file the Chapter 13. And I think on the foreclosure end, where back in the day, some of the judges were buying the arguments that the bank securitized my loan, and the bank did this and the bank did that. I think most judges have shifted their thinking today to, you borrowed the money, you had to buy the house, you have to pay it back. And so in my mind, that's when the shift starts to happen, is people see, well, wait a minute, I don't have the means to pay it back right now. And what I think people need to realize is where, Sandy, someone like you comes in really valuable, could be to take the house off their hands if there's some equity in there, or take the house off their hands in a way that, because I said this today at my networking meeting. People come in to see me all the time and they say, I've got 3 lawsuits pending against me. I got 4 other collections pending against me. I've got a whole bunch of 90 and 120 day lates. But I don't want to file bankruptcy because it's going to hurt my credit.
yeah. Right.
That's the least. Isn't it already hurt?
Yeah.
Isn't it hurting
Number
already?
one, it's already hurt.
Yeah.
And number 2, that's the least of your worries. But that may be where someone like Sandy can come in and say, well, let me help get the house taken care of in such a way that we can maybe salvage some of that credit, or it'll make it easier to repair that credit in the future. Not that you do credit repair, but getting the house, getting the debt out of the borrower's name makes it easier at a future date to then clean up credit.
I agree. I think one of the biggest burdens is your home. And I know that it is the American dream, and I get it. And I've owned several homes throughout my life as well as career. But just making the decision that, geez, this is really not going to work for me. Let me work on a plan. Let me work with Sean and George. Let me get my act together. And let Sandy do what she needs to do in the background to get rid of this burden, which again, I know it's your home, but yet at the same time, you can get another house. It doesn't mean that you're never going to ever get another home. You will. You just won't you just won't live in that one. Right. And it's not the end of the world. And I think that that's what a lot of people have that feeling or yeah.
Well, I mean, I think a lot of times too, people look at bankruptcy or short tail or foreclosure or any of those are all there's negative connotation that's tied to any of those types of situations. And I think what what I'm hearing is it's like, hey, look, these are options. These are things to try to relieve some of the stress that's tied to the situation when you're in. But this is crisis mode. Like you're in these situations.
Big time.
It's crisis mode.
Oh yeah.
So it's more of like, don't worry about credit scores. Don't worry about you're really worried about what do you need to do that's best for you and your family at that moment as well.
Yeah.
And I think that's at least that's what people need to really understand when it comes to you didn't fail. It's just situation. Sometimes life happens.
Bad stuff happens to good people.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, all the time. All the time.
And Sandy, I think you kind of nailed it too in terms of, I've said to people a lot, your house is the wood studs and the metal beams and the drywall and the flooring and the roof and all that. Your home is where the people that love you, that you love, live. That's your home. And
it could be anywhere.
Right. And you may lose the house, but a house is a thing. You can get and I get it. I'm a homeowner. So I totally get where people come from in terms of, this is my home. I've been here for X number of years. I need to save this house. I totally get it. And if the law firm crashed and burned and I found myself in a situation where I couldn't afford my mortgage payments anymore, Lord knows how I would feel. But I think that's also the advantage of talking to somebody like you or George or me, is that when it's not our house in the equation, we can take some of the emotion out of it and help you as the homeowner who's in that situation to make the best decision.
Right. And you hit on something really important. You said about saving their home. And I know I speak to so many people about that as well. What you need to do is save your health. You need to save your life. And that stress factor can destroy you and shave several years off of your life. And why do you want to do that for, as you said, block home or wood frame and studs and sheetrock? Don't do it. Just I don't want to say take the plunge, but it's almost like make the decision to be able to make yours and your family's life better.
Right. Oh, and there's so many other hacks out there in terms of how you can buy a house with no money down, how you can buy a house with no credit, how can there's all different ways that I've seen plenty of people in my practice recover from a foreclosure, from a bankruptcy, from whatever scenario. They just got to be smart about it.
One thing I do want to mention, and if you do decide to conduct a short sale, you're better off with someone like myself. I work with a team. I work with a real estate broker and an attorney who do it the right way. We negotiate with the bank. Do yourself a favor, because I've heard so many horror stories. Do not just go to your random real estate agent that's advertising on the bus stop or somewhere like that. I'm in foreclosure. I need, to work a short sale. But what this agent is doing, this agent is working for the lender. This agent is not working for you. And that house, trust me, will sit, and it's just continuously collect additional fees, attorney fees, no offense, but on the lender's side, and to the point to where all of a sudden you are stuck and you have to get out at that point because it's going to auction. And the agent was not experienced enough to be able to conduct this type of transaction.
Well, and I still think there's an issue of agents, practicing law. So
don't get me started with that.
Yeah, the negotiations with the lender, and I know some realtors say, well, I'm not practicing law. I'm not negotiating with the bank. I'm facilitating the short sale with the bank. It's the same thing. If you're taking a position and advocating for somebody else, you're representing them. And there is a danger that there are some realtors out there that are representing homeowners, without an attorney license. Now, I will also temper that and say some of the realtors that I've seen that do short sales are very, very, very good at it. Some of the realtors I've seen that do short sales are very, very, very bad at it. So I would say, I mean, I think the lesson there is just to do your homework, do your due diligence. You know, again, call someone like George, call someone like me, call someone like Sandy. Do your research, do your due diligence, figure out, you know, what's in your best interest, and then, you know, execute on that plan.
Exactly, exactly. And if you are having any questions at all, or if the emotions are just overriding you and you're hearing from your family members and neighbors and getting all kinds of advice, just put that aside and give Sean or George a call and speak to them and get the right guidance, and you'll be able to stay in the right lane.
Yeah.
Let me ask this: when we talk about short sale, it does require the lender approval in that
It does.
situation. Is there situations that that's not as easy, or can that cause some issues if the lender wants to be a little bit of a pain in the process?
Oh yes. But that's where the attorney on my team, that's where he comes in, because he does the negotiations, and he's done literally, and I'm not bragging, but thousands of short sales for the past, 25, 30 years. So him and his team are experts at negotiations.
Okay.
Eventually the lender, especially now with so many foreclosures being, well, I'll talk about that in a moment, but so many foreclosures flooding the market, they are being a lot more reasonable and amicable, let's just say.
Wow.
And they don't want it on their books. They just don't.
I think that's one of the biggest myths is people will come to me and say, well, the bank wants my house. No, they really,
they don't.
They want their money.
They want their money.
Yeah.
Now, if they're forced to take the house to get their money, they'll do that. But,
Sure.
But they don't want your house. They want your money.
Interesting. And that's what I mean. I wonder how many times that comes up, but the fact that you have a team that's helping folks, because once again, we're thinking most people in this situation, they're like, oh, I'm, on my own island. I don't have the help. I have to do everything. So I think it's just more of understanding, hey, look, getting the right people on your side to help you through this. You're not alone, and that will reduce the stress as part of this crisis, the crisis that you're in.
It's embarrassing. People, justifiably are embarrassed by this.
Oh, I know. I went through it myself. I mean, I had properties. I was flipping like crazy in New York, and got caught up. Everybody, we were all fat and sassy. We were all making money, and it just. The hedge funds blowing up at Bear Stearns. I actually used to work at Bear Stearns as well. I ended up losing everything. And I was one of those too. I don't want to file bankruptcy. And I had all these properties that were, way over leveraged. And I had to do what I had to do. It's devastating.
It is. But you've recovered from that.
Oh, yeah. No, life goes on.
Yeah. And I think that was one of the reasons why I thought you would be such an interesting person to talk to, because I think our listeners would benefit from hearing stories from people that, hey, look, I was there, I was in your shoes, and this bad thing happened, and here's how I addressed it, and X number of years later, it's now in the rearview mirror, and things are better now.
Exactly. One thing I do want to mention is right around COVID, there was a mandate in the previous administration that I need to speak about this delicately, but but in a nutshell, the lenders, any loan that was HUD backed, the Freddie Mac, Fannie Mae, all of those, they were required to, and it was mandated that they work with the homeowners and allow them to be able to work a loan modification, regardless if they were able to, if they were approved or not. But they were approving them, and this just finally this mandate has been lifted as of the end of last year. So basically, there are no more get out of jail free cards. So if you weren't paying your mortgage, it would have been a good idea for you to be able to save your money. If not, then you're in a situation to know that more than likely you will not be approved for another loan mod, and the ball is going to start rolling. Yeah. So, and sorry, sometimes I get tongue twisted.
No
worries. Yeah,
it's an interesting point, because again, I had a consultation with somebody recently who wants to short sell their house, and they've got an agent and they got an offer. And they came to me and they said, will you help me do a short sale of my house? And I said, yeah, I will. And we talked about it a little bit. And he said, yeah, but, I called the bank. And the bank said that I first had to do a loan modification application and be denied. And I said, okay. And he said, but I don't want to modify my loan. And so on the off chance that I fill out this loan modification and they approve me, I don't want to keep this house, but it's not worth what I owe on it anymore.
Right.
And the only answer that I could give him was either, number one, I negotiate with the bank and I try to get them to avoid the loan mod route. Or, unfortunately, you go the loan mod route. If it gets denied, then you go the short sale route. If it gets approved, I don't know any other way to get around that other than defaulting on the loan modification.
Exactly. Stop paying your mortgage again.
And then say to the bank, okay, the loan mod didn't work. Now can I short sell it? People say to me all the time, what happens in our industry makes no sense. And what I typically say back to them is, if you try to make common sense out of any of this, you're going to drive yourself nuts.
Right.
So,
right.
One of the other things that we kind of talked about, which I thought was interesting, which I wanted to bring up again on the show, is kind of the other side of that coin, because people will there's a lot of real estate investors out there that do things the wrong way.
Oh,
and so one of the things that we talked about was how to avoid the scams, how to avoid the predators that are out there. What do you think about
what do you
think about that?
Your best bet is to, if they have a contract, all right, have them send it to you, and then send it to me, and I'll look it over. That's really the best thing. And don't sign anything yet. Like, don't do it yet, because there's a lot of individuals out there that'll get something. They're called wholesalers, and don't get me wrong, there are some good wholesalers out there, but what they'll do, they'll get a property under contract, and they'll just go and try to sell it to somebody, and the clock is ticking. But at the same time, what they'll do is they will put on the contract, let's say, if it's a closing, it's supposed to be on or before, let's just say, March 1st. But they'll manipulate the contract saying on or after March 1st. And there is nothing you can do about that. And what they'll do is they can record that in the county clerk's office and cloud the title. And then on top of that, if they want to say, well, okay, well, I was going to buy your house first, so now you owe me $10,000 or $25,000. And it's not worth trying to take them to court to negotiate with that. So then they just end up getting paid. And I do know there are a few of them here. I can't mention their names, but please feel free to call me and I can tell you over the phone.
I always think it's funny when a wholesaler tries to hold a seller hostage.
Yeah.
And say, well, if you want me to release this contract, you've got to pay me X amount of dollars. And I'm like, dude, they're in foreclosure. They're on the verge of bankruptcy. Where do you think they're going to get this?
Where the money is going?
It's on the verge of a short sale. So, I mean, if this were a property that had $100,000 of equity, then I could see where a wholesaler could take advantage of somebody and maybe have a little bit of leverage to say, okay, you got $100,000 of equity there, pay me 10 or 15 or 20, so you walk away with 80, and they make their money. That, I don't agree with it, but I could see where a wholesaler could hold someone's feet to the fire in that kind of a scenario. But in a scenario where there's a short sale pending or a bankruptcy or a foreclosure sale pending or something like that, for the wholesaler to say, hey, Mr. or Mrs. Seller, you want me to let you out of this contract, you got to pay me X.
Yeah.
Where's the seller going to get
Where's
it?
The money coming from?
They don't have the money to do it anyway.
It's not right.
Are you seeing most investors use what I would call homegrown contracts that they create, or are you seeing investors and others out there using the FAR bar, the realtor approved, the attorney approved FAR bar form?
I find both. One of my business partners, he does have his own contract. He's been doing this for decades. His wife is an attorney, so it's a very simple, condensed version of the Florida FAR bar contract.
Right.
And I use both, quite honestly.
It's interesting. A couple of years ago, so every, I don't know, 2-3 years, the realtor attorney committee gets together to review and revise that standard Florida FAR bar. FAR is the Florida Association of Realtors. BAR is the Florida Bar. It's designed to be a fill-in-the-blank form so that realtors aren't practicing law when they're filling it out. And every 2-3 years, the attorney realtor committee gets together to review that thing. The funniest part to me was there's been, minor revisions over the years. The last big revision was to make the contract simpler. And to make the contract simpler, they changed it from a 4-page contract to a 12-page contract.
Wrong direction.
That's how they decided to make it simpler.
Well, bigger font, right?
No.
It's really designed for someone who's going to, who has the traditional way of selling. You're with a real estate agent, and because it has so much legalese in there regarding, oh my gosh, inspection and conventional mortgages and this kind of thing.
It covers everything. It covers lead. It covers radon. It covers.
Right.
I had my first one in a couple of years the other day that covered FERPTA, which is foreign sellers. It covered. Yeah, if you have a person who's not a U.S. citizen or doesn't file U.S. tax returns, they have to comply with certain tax laws in their sale of the property, because the danger is, if they're not a U.S. citizen, they sell the property, they take off, they go home, the U.S. isn't going to be allowed to collect cash on that transaction, tax on that transaction.
Oh, that's interesting.
So there's certain hoops they have to jump through for IRS purposes. So that's
interesting.
we can dive into FERPTA in another issue, but another episode. But my point is that contract is all inclusive to cover every possible scenario.
Wow.
It is.
So, also, what are some other, I don't want to say that, I don't want to use the word scam, but what are some other things you're seeing out there in terms of,
what to look out for?
Yeah,
what are we
things
looking
to
out
look
for?
at, red flags
Yeah.
in terms of distressed property sales?
Okay. Actually, when I leave here, I'm going to be meeting a gentleman who, and again, no offense about attorneys, but there's an attorney, not at all, because you are on the up and up and as honest as the day is long.
You don't know me very well.
There is an attorney that's actually local who preys on the elderly.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's not good. In terms of probates, in terms of estate planning or real estate.
In terms of probate and foreclosure,
Yeah.
it could be the same, one and the same.
Right.
But yeah, he's his mother passed away, and there's an attorney, a probate attorney, and again, I'm not naming any names,
No.
where he literally wants the property, and he'll go after the property, and I believe, and I don't know this for sure, but I believe he's using a straw man to be able to make the transaction. And I don't know about the state of Florida, but I know in New York that's highly illegal. And what I'm going to do, I'm helping him to be able to circumvent that and to hire another probate attorney just to be able to facilitate and finish the probate, which should have already been done 5 months ago. But he's been dragging his feet because, again, he knows this will eventually go to auction, and he wants to grab the house.
Wow.
It's bad.
I think the biggest issue with using a straw man buyer or a wholesale buyer, there's this whole issue of it's called an ABC transaction. So the seller is going to sell to the straw man or the wholesale buyer, which is B. And then that straw man or wholesale buyer is going to turn around and sell to the end buyer, who is C. So it's A to B to C. The problem is, and we dealt with this a ton in the late 90s and early 2010, the late 2000s, early 2010s, we dealt with this a lot, where the B to C part, the wholesaler or straw man to the end buyer part, would generate the money to pay the A to B part. The wholesaler or straw man part to the end buyer would generate the money for the wholesaler or straw man buyer to pay the seller. and that's each transaction should be able to stand on its own. I don't necessarily have a problem with a straw man buyer or wholesale buyer as long as each transaction stands on its own. If I make an agreement with you to buy your house for $100,000, and then I buy your house for $100,000, and then I'm good at negotiating, and so I get George to buy it for $125,000, I don't necessarily see anything wrong. I think there might be issues there if it's distressed property, elderly property, something like that. But just on its face, me buying from you and then me turning around and selling to George, I don't necessarily see anything bad with that transaction unless I can't pay you your $100,000 until after I get the $125,000 from George.
Correct.
I think that's what makes it
Correct.
improper, and
Correct.
that could be something to look out for as well. If you're being approached by one of these straw buyers, wholesalers, whatever, you can ask them the question: are you going to buy my house and then resell it, or are you going to use the money from your sale of the house? And also, no, I mean, straw buyers, wholesalers, most investors, they have to make a living, so there is going to be a small markup from when you sell the house to them and they turn around and sell it to somebody else.
Oh, exactly. But in this particular case, it's the attorney that's doing it. So he showed up to the attorney's office after submitting all of these offers to the attorney, and on the settlement statement, it showed the attorney receiving close to $100,000 for, like miscellaneous. So that's what I'm talking about. It had nothing to do with,
FloridaBar.org.
Yeah.
FloridaBar.org.
It's like one step at a time with this gentleman. It really is. But
Gotcha.
I'm helping him.
Yeah.
I'm helping him, and I'm doing it for nothing. And this is part of how I give back. Mm-hmm.
So speaking of websites, I want to give your websites. You got two of them. You got sandybuysHouses.com and you got FloridaProbateCare.com. And again, we'll put both of those in the show notes. And Florida Probate Care, Florida is spelled out, Florida, Probate Care. Your email addresses are info@sandybuysHouses.com or info@FloridaProbateCare.com. And so, again, you help with distressed properties, bankruptcy properties, probate properties, distressed properties.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Excellent. All right. I mean, I learned a lot. I got to say right now, I'm just definitely not wanting, obviously if you're in this situation, there's a lot of stress, I'd imagine. There's a lot of emotion that's being tied to this conversations. So obviously having a person and a team that's there available to be able to provide that support and that knowledge in the time where you're thinking oh my goodness, what do I do? It's good to have people like yourself and your team, and obviously Sean as well, for you to be able to provide that wealth of knowledge. So it's nice to be in a room with a lot of smart people. That's for sure.
You're smart too, George.
Even you, George.
Yeah, that's all right.
Because they can come to you, like I said, when they see the cliff coming, they can come to you.
Hopefully they have enough runway
right
to be able to do that. And I think a lot of times too, it's you always think about income, situation, amount of debt. So there's a few things that you want to keep in mind. For sure, but there's these are stages of that journey to kind of okay, what can I do? How far along am I in this, and who do I need to reach out to? So it's something to definitely keep in mind.
And I'd like to also say to your audience, just pick up the phone.
Yeah,
pick up the phone and call Yesner Law. Really, just take that first step, because believe it or not, taking that first step, you'll have so much joy. You may not see it now, but it will be sometime down the road. But you have to take the first step. So definitely pick up the phone.
Absolutely.
So anything that we didn't talk about? Anything else you want to mention?
About probate, really quickly.
Sure.
I do my best to get this message out to all of the family members. If you have a loved one, whether in state or if you live out of state, get in touch with that loved one. Find out what's going on. Interview the caretaker. Find out what's going on maybe with some siblings or some relatives, because I do hear a lot of horror stories with that as well, where the caretaker or the guardian, and actually there was a guardian that was just on trial in Florida, do some investigating. Find out really what's going on, because don't think out of sight, out of mind. That's a loved one. Regardless if there was an issue in the past, just let it go. Find out what's going on.
some of the
Stay
nasty,
connected. Yeah.
some of the nastiest disputes I see are with family, and life is too short for any of that.
Yeah, I would
any
agree.
of that drama.
Actually,
So, and my family's not exempt from that drama.
none of ours are, man.
No one's.
We know how to drink coffee and Magic Minds in the morning to keep us going. That's how I look at
You
it.
have to try that Magic Mind.
There you go.
Look that up.
Yeah, absolutely. So I do also want to mention it's February 25 at 6 p.m. is your free webinar, right?
Yes. So again, from kind of struggling to abundance, we have a webinar on February 25th, Tuesday, from 6 to 7, and it's really understanding the mindset that we have and what do I need to do to actually change. So again, if you're interested, there's a link in the show notes. It's a free just to have a good conversation in regards to what do we need to do to get that jump start, to see where we are and how we can change.
And February 25, 2025.
2025,
So
correct.
if you're listening to this after February 25 of 2025, you either got to catch the replay or you got to wait for the next one.
The next one will be
But
available.
if you're listening to the show on the day it comes out, it'll be the Tuesday after you're listening to this podcast episode. We also want to, again, mention Magic Mind. It's magicmind.com/CD20. That'll be 20% off your first order. That will support me and George a little bit. We get a little bit from that, but we wouldn't be mentioning Magic Mind if we didn't think it was a good product. They also have a sleep formula. So if you need some help getting to sleep at night, they do also have a sleep formula that I think that CD20 will work. That CD20 code will work, whether it's the sleep formula or the focus formula or possibly both. If you want to support us, that's patreon.com/crushingdebt. You can get some behind the scenes stuff. You can get some behind the paywall stuff. You can get, I don't know if George is going to
videos
and maybe cutting together an outtake reel at some point.
It's there. Don't worry.
Who knows what George is going to do? Also, we got to mention our friend, our longtime friend and sponsor, Sam Cohen. He owns Attorneys First Insurance. So if you are an attorney or title company and you need malpractice coverage, it's sam@attorneysfirst.com. Thank you, Sam. He's been around almost since the beginning. So
nice.
So thank you, Sam, for your help. And then again, our guest. Thank you to Sandy. Again, it's info@sandybuysHouses.com or info@floridaprobatecare.com. Those are also her websites, sandybuysHouses.com and floridaprobatecare.com. Anything I'm missing?
No. Just got to get the tagline right.
Happy Valentine's Day.
Happy Valentine's Day. I got to get the tagline right, which I screwed up last week. We hope that at the end of the month you have more money rather than at the end of the money you have more month.
Nice.
Nice.
I had to slow it down to make sure I got it right. So I probably should take another Magic Mind shot to make sure I get it right. So that will do it for this week's episode. Thank you all. Thank you again, Sandy, for being on the show.
Oh, thank you. Thank you both.
And we will talk to you in next week's episode of the Crushing Debt Podcast.